Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us from everywhere you're joining us from. And my name is Michelle Wandili. I'm a program associate here at Women at the Table, and we're excited to host this AI4D knowledge synthesis webinar. The title for today's webinar is Gender, AI, and STEM. And we have fantastic speakers who will be discussing a lot of their research that they've worked on. We are here to share and celebrate the research of AI4D hubs with African researchers, grantees, and different hub leaders. So I would like to hand over to Adedeji. Just a quick introduction. Adedeji is the Director of Education and Governance Research and a Senior Research Fellow at the Center for the Study of Economics of Africa. He's a leading development think tank based in Nigeria. He holds a PhD from the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa, and a master's and bachelor's degree in economics and educational management from the University of Ibadan. He previously worked as a seasonal lecturer in the Department of Witwatersrand and as a data analyst in the Analyst Data Services and Resources, and as a teaching assistant in the Department of Economics, University of Ibadan. His research interests cut across macroeconomics development, finance, public economics, and policy analysis and experimental economics. So we're very well placed. We're in very capable hands today, and I'm very excited to be able to hand over to you. We'll speak a little bit more about the series and all the different webinars that are coming up in the series at the end. But for now, I'll hand over to you, Adedeji, and excited to start this conversation.
Thank you so much, Mitchell, and thanks everybody that you find your precious time to join us this afternoon. I'm speaking from Nigeria, so we're afternoon, but it could be morning from where you are joining us. So today we are going to be discussing a very important issues, gender, AI, and STEM strategies. And this is quite important for our continent, Africa, for many reasons. STEM goes beyond just teaching kids mathematics and science. It also embodies actually instilling into them skills that enable them to build their creativity and innovation. It's also about really equipping them with digital skills that is needed for the 21st century labor market. All of these, with the absence of these, we know the implication for long-term economic development and also individual growth. In Africa, we know that STEM is very important and a lot of conversation has always been there. But I think important issues in STEM education still apply around the exclusion issues. One data that actually is striking is the fact that according to African Development Bank, about 25% of African students in secondary school that are doing STEM-related courses, only 25% are women. That really paints the picture of exclusion that we're talking about and that we draw more about today. But when you go to tertiary institutions and graduates, there's a little bit improvement, and because data shows that about 47% of the graduates from STEM education are women. But when we now look into the career trajectory of these graduates, we see again an emerging inequality. For example, 32% of female in Africa that are into R&D scientists are women. Also, only about 20% of those in science and engineering workforce are women. For artificial intelligence, data shows that only 29% are women. So we have a problem that I think should be of interest to everyone about strategies that we need to address this issue. And as someone that has been interested in AI and the conversation around the linkage between AI and gender, I'm very happy to have two great panelists that will be discussing this with us today. So I would introduce my panelists. First is Alice Amenga. Alice is an expert in technical, vocational, and education training, TVET. She currently works with the World Bank African Education Fellow with the portfolio in South Asia, region education practices. She holds a PhD in education and development, international development from the University of Cambridge, having obtained a master's degree in comparative and international education from the University of Oxford. She also holds a BA in psychology from the University of Ghana, specializing in clinical and education psychology. Her research includes women participation in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Alice is passionate about women empowerment, especially girls. Thanks, Alice, for joining us this afternoon. And my second panelist is Gloria Manco. She is a lecturer at the University of Dodoma and an AI practitioner and researcher. Currently, she pursued a PhD in AI natural language processing at the Shubero Institute of Technology, Tokyo. She has a track record in STEM initiative promoting gender equality, inclusion in AI and technology. Some of our notable projects include transforming employability for social change in East Africa, designing low cost technology toolkits to encourage girls' participation in STEM, establishment of multidisciplinary and gender inclusive AI4D research lab, and a principal investigator of the project for exploring gender stereotypes and inclusive intervention in addressing systematic barriers and promote inclusion in AI for development research in Tanzania. She's also the co-founder of Illuminati, Women Supporting Women in Sciences. And she served as a liaison manager and gender coordinator for Anglophone for AI4D Lab. So as you can see this profile, we have a rich conversation to have today. And so I welcome my panelists to the conversation. And as we start this conversation, I want to actually start with this simple thing. I mean, looking at your background in various aspects of digital skills development, STEM education, girl inclusion issue, how has this work influenced how you really view the future of STEM education and general digital skills in Africa? I will call Alice first for your intervention.
Thank you very much, JDJ. Welcome to all our audience. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is a pleasure to be here to be talking about such an important issue globally, because we know that the 21st century is being driven by science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I believe that the research into the participation of women and girls in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics continue to grow. But what hasn't changed is the rate at which girls are studying STEM and women transitioning into the STEM labor market. My research over the years has looked at what are the enablers to get more girls to reimagine their purpose for STEM, or how can STEM be reimagined to fit the purpose of girls and to ensure that women who get these skills in STEM are transitioning into the labor market and are actually staying to access and retention and also growth. In doing this research, one of the striking findings that I found with my study at the University of Cambridge was the fact that, using Ghana as a context, was the fact that young women did have aspiration for STEM. And so their inadequate participation or their under participation is not a lack of aspiration. There are a lot of girls who would want to be scientists. There are a lot of girls who would want to explore technology. There are a lot of girls who are, if not higher performers in mathematics, are as good as boys or men in mathematics. And so what is the problem? And my research shows that, and other research have corroborated that, it is a matter of fact that girls do not have their intrinsic value associated with STEM. And it's because over the years, we haven't portrayed STEM as valuable for women or women as valuable for STEM. And when I say women as valuable for STEM, I mean that women would be viewed or girls would be viewed as significant for the purpose of STEM. And so we have, let's use AI for instance. In their boom of ChatGTP or generative AI, we are seeing it being propelled by mostly men. And meeting Gloriana today is inspiring because we know that there are few women in there who are inputting data. And when you look at artificial intelligence, it's teaching a machine to learn or act like human beings. And so if we don't have women in these fields, informing these machines and giving them the kind of language that is inclusive and not biased towards men, not biased towards a particular race, not biased towards some particular kind of social structures, then we are digging a hole for ourselves because we know that at the end of the day, we are largely excluding a large number of the global population, which are women and girls, persons with disabilities, persons who are experiencing displacement um, due to war, due to conflict, due to instabilities, from fully imagining themselves in an era where AI would be in lead in terms of the labor market, in terms of our social structures. And so I think that in looking at the future, there is a bit of scare that are women, one, or girls contributing to this language that are informing AI? Two, how is AI being used to ensure that the existing gaps in the participation of girls and women in STEM is being closed? And so if you look at it, you can think about STEM as a means in itself where it is solving problems, where girls and women could participate in the labor market based on the knowledge that they are gaining. But equally, you could see STEM as a means to a goal where it is providing resources for girls to participate in STEM. And so I believe that there is the global aspiration is clear, it is ambitious, but then there should be some more additional intention to ensure that the systems that are being developed, especially with AI, are not being biased towards the participation of girls and women in the labor market, in education, but rather is being used as a tool to address the existing problems of the under participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. I think you've contributed very well to this conversation around highlighting the problems and also some potential solution. I think we would ask more about some of the intrinsic value issues that you just brought up. But let me bring in Gloriana into that conversation. Gloriana, I don't know. I mean, you are a researcher working on AI, and I don't know. Maybe you can really use your work to really give us a clear picture in terms of what do you view as the future of STEM education in Africa.
Well, so yeah, thank you so much, Datage. And as what Alice already said, I would actually cement on what you said and specifically using our work as a focus point that what we are doing and how how we view the future of STEM, our education, especially with the drastic, or the rapid growth of technology and the advocates of our STEM initiatives and all those kind of things, and trying to remove the gender stereotype and everything that is around, which is also making these girls not being able to join STEM. I mean, to join the AI field and the related fields. What we are doing in our research, we are trying to have an inclusive intervention to address these systematic barriers and promote the women inclusion. And as we started working on having some initiatives like Girls in AI, trying to advocate about gender in AI, try to have them be aware of what is needed in the market or in the field of AI, and how is it important to have women representation in the field of AI. And we thought that that was not only, having the girls understanding the concept is not good enough, because these girls are being influenced by the environment where they are studying or where they are living. And having the society surrounding these girls having different opinions on how the girls are not able or they're able to do these things, it actually directly affect you know, they are not I mean they are being affected by the fact that they do not have a good supportive environment, which actually leads them to, you know, choosing the STEM careers. So we decided to go further and try to see if we can have an intervention to the education system, especially in training the STEM teachers who are the ones you know, nurturing these girls and the students in general. So we wanted to have to create an inclusive environment that will encourage girls to participate in STEM subjects, and later to also consider the career in the field of AI or the related fields. And we thought of having, you know, coming up with some gender responsive curriculums and teaching methodologies that will also help these teachers to also, I mean, to help these young girls to feel confident in the teaching or learning environment, so that they can have that confidence of joining the STEM subjects, and also, you know, having the courage to go to push further with the STEM careers. So we feel like it is very crucial to have an innovative problem solving and future of STEM technology. I mean, to have that kind of environment that can actually bring these kind of issues, like to make these girls to think further or to become creative, and also to feel that they are also part of the learning process, and also to feel that they are part of they are not left out. They don't feel like they do not belong to that particular environment. So we thought of having such kind of thing that will actually change the narrative in the society and the learning environment.
Thank you so much, Doriana. I think the conversation around we need not just one intervention, we need a multi-pronged approach in order to address that problem. I think I will come back to you on that conversation, but I want to bring back Alice into this conversation. So, Alice, looking at your work, the body of work you've so far produced, which are very interesting, in one of your work, you highlighted the problem in girls' inclusion in STEM education as a pipeline problem, and you highlighted the problem of these in achieving gender parity. So my question is, what do you see as the cause or possible solution to this pipeline problem? If you can also speak to is this also linked to the intrinsic value issue you raised around girls not made for STEM, or STEM not really trying to really bring them in? So highlight to us, what do you mean by this pipeline problem? How do you think the cultural emergence of it, and yeah, what do you think? How do we address it, Alice?
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a very important question. And I think in my article on how these courses impact the participation of girls and women in STEM, the core argument is that the participation of girls and women in STEM is not a simple pipeline. It's not a linear trajectory. And that boils back to the fact that we notice that girls have some specific values that are related more to human engagement. And so the idea that we want STEM to be fixed on some particular aspect of our lives, or we want to project STEM as rigid, as firm, as not being humanistic in its focus. And the idea is you'd see most young women, and when I was doing my analysis in Ghana, I was looking at the gender ratio in science courses. So I focus on STEM in technical education, which is what I would describe as hardcore STEM. It's not biology, it's not chemistry, it's actually the application of engineering in more technical areas, the application of computer science in more technical areas. And we know that globally, we need technicians to pipeline development or to project development. And so what I notice is if you go into a regular science classroom in Ghana, where they're offering science in terms of biology, physics, chemistry, the gender parity was almost 50-50. And you see that most of these young women would go on into the universities to either study medicine, biological sciences, become nurses, or go into pharmacy. And if you go into the pure science where it's more applicable in the technical areas where you have core engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer hardware technology, agricultural mechanization technology, the ratio is like 3 girls is to 50 boys or 2 girls is to 60 boys in the classroom. And that is where the intrinsic value shows coming clearly that women would naturally be wired to look at science in an area where is focused on supporting humanity, focused on care, focused on providing that touch to improve human life. But we know that science in its focus or STEM in its focus cuts across every aspect of our lives. And talking to one girl in my research, I asked her, why are you here? What made you stand against all odds to choose STEM in a technical school in Ghana? And she said something that kept me thinking that if we should look at STEM more broadly than just being something abstract, then we might get more young women to start thinking about their role in STEM, but also STEM for them. And what she said was that she grew up in a community that did have tarred roads. And she got to know that construction is the means to solve that problem. And so she was in school to study building and construction to become an engineer so that she would have the technical skills to construct a road in her community. But then if she's a graduate and the road in her community is built, she has the critical skills to ensure that roads are built in Ghana. And for her, that means that her mom could get access to the market. That means that children in her village can get to go to school on time. And so she saw the human value of STEM, and that made her choose her courses. And I think that is the kind of conversation that are not brought to the fold for girls and women to know that you don't have to be a doctor before you can sort of cater for human being. But every aspect of science has this humanistic value that adds, that brings about transformation in our daily lives. And once we begin to draw in that humanistic conversation and the transformation that STEM has for women, but also women have in STEM, then the conversation is broadened. It's no more about one pipeline because girls can choose to do STEM at any part in their life. They can choose to have the STEM skills and may not work in the STEM labor market, but other labor market. But the interesting thing is they are applying their STEM knowledge in these sort of labor or in these sort of careers that might not traditionally be STEM. And so I asked these other girls, what do you want to use your STEM skills for? And I was surprised to know that whilst majority did want to go into STEM labor market, some were willing to use their STEM skills in non-traditional STEM labor market. For instance, some of the girls I interviewed were willing to become technicians in the military, were willing to become technicians in the security workforce. And these are non-traditional STEM fields, but we know that we need STEM knowledge to manage their military equipment, to design new military equipment. And we need the diversity of women's ideas, women's contributions to make sure that the purpose of these scientific innovation and outcomes are inclusive for both men and women. And I think this is a place where we have to start broadening the conversation to get women and girls to value STEM for what it really is for human development and transformation.
Thank you so much, Alice. I mean, you've done justice to that question. So, but I just want to bring in Gloriana into that. I mean, just to build on the conversation we are having. I mean, Gloriana, you have actually done a lot of initiatives around girls' inclusion in education, in AI, and this sort of field. But most times when we see strategies that people tends to really introduce, it tends to be very linear. I mean, not addressing the pipeline problem that Alice mentioned. For example, we often limit ourselves to issues like teaching girls to code. Um, but like we have seen in your contribution and in Alice's contribution, we need to do more. So what other robust kind of way do you think we can really develop women and girls in STEM initiatives? What do you think what are we not having that has not really changed a lot in that conversation?
Well, yeah, you're very right. As you say that we are trying to, I mean, we tend to be linear on, focusing more on probably teaching girls to code so that they get excited to join these STEM fields and whatsoever. And I would say that teaching girls to code is a great start, but it's just a one piece of much of a a large puzzle. And we need to do more. We need to come up with robust approach that is also going to provide us some some much exciting environment that will bring these girls to be interested to join our STEM. And what I think one of the approach that can be can be very robust and sustainable is to include a and create a supportive learning environment that is offering some mentorship programs and also exposing students, to female role models probably in STEM, because I know it is important to have some role models who are acting like, when they see these role models, they get it, they get motivated. They know that this is possible to be done instead of just hearing or instead of being taught or being told by the counterparts, because they won't be able to relate. But if they see these role models, they'll be excited and they'll be also motivated that things are very possible. And additionally, I would say we should also address the unconscious biases that are within workspace and, in our environment, because we tend to do things even without realizing that we are discouraging the other gender. So there are those biases that are within us because of the how we have been raised and how we do things, even from the educators themselves. We try to talk about gender equality, but when it comes to practice, maybe you are in the class, as a teacher, you might be focusing on asking certain kind of questions to male students. For instance, if it is about coding, you will focus on the on the male students and simple questions, for instance, or presentation or the designing of systems and whatsoever maybe will fall under the other gender. But this is creating a gap between these two parts. So how are we doing? I mean, how are we rectifying, or how are we working on our teaching strategies and to address the unconscious biases within us? So we need to have some, to come up with systematic change in educational policies and to promote gender equality in order to encourage these girls to be able to feel that they are comfortable and they are supported by the environment and they feel being empowered to navigate and excel in STEM fields. So that's how I feel that it is going to work and it's going to be a more sustainable way. We should not only just focus on giving them just practical skills, but rather building or creating a supportive environment.
Great. An holistic environment that enables them to learn. I mean, that's
Yeah.
great. But Before I go to, so Gloria, I think I want to stay a little bit with you to follow up on the important issue you've raised around the importance of role model.
Oh,
And I think the literature is really, we've seen in literature a lot of studies that really shows the importance of female role model for girls' inclusion and their trajectory in the workforce. But like we see for many new technology, they have a problem, they have an exclusion problem. I think that speaks for also not just previous ones, even AI has a inclusion problem. The data that was alluding to earlier shows that just 29% of workforce in AI in Africa are women. So
mm.
my question is, if we are missing, I mean, if there is not enough women that will be as the role model, is there any other thing we could do, right? Do we? I mean, if we are not really producing enough role model, that pattern can perpetuate itself further and further. So, do you think there are other levels we can pull in situation whereby we have very limited role models?
Well, that's a very good question. Actually, to speak of the statistic that you just mentioned, like 29% of women who are engaging in STEM in Africa, that is a very little number. And we understand that most of these, they are not even in technical fields. I mean, like probably they are in, administrative works. Probably they're working in the, tech industries, but not in technical fields.
Mm,
If you come to the coding part, the programmers, the developers, the statistic becomes even lower than what you mentioned.
mm,
Because I speak from the experience and from the environment that we are working. We do have very little number of female programmers, and nearly sometimes out of maybe 20 women who are engaging in STEM career or in tech, maybe two or only one who is engaging fully or practicing the 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 the, the coding or whatever.
mm.
So what I wanted to say that missing these female role models in STEM is a significant barrier. And to address this, we need not only just, saying that we need to have role models, encouraging the girls, but rather we need to have some, I mean, the policies, the policymakers, they need to come up with a strategy that will actually implement initiatives that will promote and celebrate these female role models, because it is really important to encourage even the role models. If we do not celebrate these women, we do not celebrate their achievements in STEM, we will actually leave a community that is unmotivated. And not only that, we need to continue providing, or the government or the systems, they need to continue providing opportunities like scholarships for girls to enforce some gender equality in STEM education and employment opportunities. They are really trying to do such, but yeah, we still need to do more and create network and platform that women in STEAM can share their experiences, can also inspire can also inspire girls. So that is really important. So we need to work on the policies that will ensure this will safeguard these women and to provide an inclusive environment to girls to start and work in STEM fields while addressing the issues of harassment, discrimination, and all those kind of things, which will make these girls not feeling safe in such kind of an environment. So we need all those kind of things to be addressed so that we can have fully participation of female with no fear.
Thank you so much, Gloria. I think that's very wonderful. Let me also really talk a little bit. So, thanks our audience. I just want to say that you can also participate in this conversation. So there is a Q&A icon on your Zoom meeting link, and you can drop your questions into that Q&A, or you can also drop it into the chat. We are happy to really respond to it and also use it to engage our panelists. So we look forward to your contribution. But let me go back to Alice. So Alice, I think our conversation now it's around about solution oriented, right? How do we really address this problem? And I think we've started talking about how we can use some individualized intervention, role model, and some kind of behavioral intervention around that. But I think that would not be enough. Like we've said, it's not just one solution. It has to be a very holistic solution. So my question to you, Alice, would how do you think we can mobilize different socio-economic resources to create a transformative STEM education program?
It is very critical that we look beyond their, it's more or less taking an ecological approach where there is the micro, macro, meso layers of the problem. And I would always go back to what young women themselves see as the solutions they want to be considered. I mean, there are a lot of policies around gender inclusive STEM, a lot of conversation around how to make STEM workforce diverse. But I will pick on three core issues or four core issues based on the idea like that this is a layered problem. And so in the issue of role models, I believe that you make a good point to say that there are not enough role models. And what conversation with STEM girls themselves say that men, their fathers and their colleagues who are mostly boys are their allies. And when I use the connotation of allies, what I'm trying to say is they are their sort of motivation for their decision to study STEM. And so as we discuss how to get more women into STEM, the conversation shouldn't be just female role models. The conversation should be bringing men into the fold to say, you know, we want you to be allies of this agenda. We want boys in the classroom to be allies in this. We want male STEM teachers who are the majority to be allies. As we pull more women into the fold, what we have now is men being majority of the role models, boys being majority in the STEM classrooms, men being majority of teachers in STEM classes. And so how do we leverage on this existing human resources, which are men, unfortunately or fortunately, for them to contribute to the change that we are seeking for? And so teachers being conscious of gender sensitive language, boys in the classrooms being sensitive to the language that they use in the classroom towards girls. And we'd also want to see more men in STEM fields joining the conversation to say that, you know, it is possible for women to do it. And I think most of these girls that I spoke to indicate that their fathers were the ones who supported them to make their STEM decisions. Or men in STEM in their communities were the ones who convince them or convince their parents to say, you know, it is possible for your girl child to study STEM. So that is one of the solutions, bringing more men into the conversation. The other solution would be focusing on education and career guidance and counseling, mostly in the African context. We make our education and career decisions based on very limited information about what they really are, what value do they give to ourselves, and but most importantly, what value these courses hold for our communities, our societies, and globally. So I think that there is a critical need to provide such resources. I, for instance, out of my research from the University of Cambridge, is currently piloting a project, or I have an NGO called Education Aspirations Hub. And what we are trying to do is to provide their information, the critical information that young people need to broaden their horizon about careers across board different sectors, but also to inspire more girls to start thinking about STEM and TVET in the technical side, just as Gloria said that even if you go to the sectors where you have women participating, they might not be working in the technical field or in the technical aspect of those careers. And so that conversation is very critical. And I think that is important that schools begin to look at how to provide relevant information at the crucial point where young people are beginning to choose their courses. For instance, the transition between middle school, which is like junior high school, to secondary school, where specialization in courses begin, and then from senior high school to tertiary, where additional specialization is reinforced, and then in their transition to the labor market, because you don't want the girls to drop out or not to retain their interest. And so that is number three. That is number two. And then in terms of the third solution, I would say that our society should be brought into the conversation, the critical roles that community members play, the critical role that churches can play in the, especially in the African context where we are broadly more or less like a community-based societies, more less than the individualized societies. We need everybody as a stakeholder in the conversation, and teachers play a role, peers play a role, role models play a role, but we need everybody to buy into the agenda that we need women in STEM and STEM need women, to make sure that we are diversifying the innovation and creativity that we are looking for. And so these are some of the solutions that I can propose. Role model is brilliant, but let's use what we have. Let's get men talking that girls can. Let's get communities interested, aspiring for it. Let's get girls themselves rethinking their values for STEM. And I think that gradually, through the awareness creating, through education, career guidance, and counseling that are very sensitive and inclusive to the values and agendas of girls, we would see the numbers improve and eventually get the parity that we are looking for in terms of the participation of girls and women in science, technology, and engineering, mathematics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. I think you lay out the key solutions and how we should be rethinking the process clearly. And I think policymakers have a lot to learn from this conversation. Let me bring in Gloriana again. We've been discussing solution, but more importantly, as much as we like to really think around the micro, I think the macro policy is also very important. I mean, individual can do a lot, but policy makers can do a lot more. And in this policy discussion, I mean, as someone that works in a think tank, we really think about policy intervention from policy windows. Like we know that promoting STEM education would really deliver economic development and other development goals for Africa. But that means we understand the problem. But how do we really take that leap to ensure that we really achieve that transformation? It's mostly the problem. And the question is around, do you see some policy windows that I imagine in Africa, maybe either problems or even opportunities that I imagine on the continent that we can really uh, help us to really apply some of the solutions that is coming from you and Alice around how do we improve STEM education, especially for girls in Africa? Do you see any opportunities emerging from recent development on the continent?
Well, thank you so much. And before I continue, I would really like to cement on what Alice said. Like, we need to bring more men in the conversation and everyone else, every stakeholders in the conversation. That is really, really important. And going to your question about the opportunities that maybe Africa has for STEM, I do see a lot of opportunities because Africa's unique position with its youthful population and the rapid growth of technology sector itself, it offers a fertile ground for transformative growth in STEM education. So we do have an opportunity to leapfrog the traditional education, our educational models, and to use or to integrate the innovative teaching methods, such as project-based learning and digital platforms, because we do have I mean, we need to use the advantage of technology and use the digital platforms to also make the education more exciting to students so that they can access the STEM easily, and they can also be inspired through those platforms. And I feel like we also, uh, as a continent or countries, we need uh, to continue encouraging the collaboration between the government, private sectors, industries, and education institutions, so that they can come together and work together, because they have to complement each other. There's this thing that we always say, that there is a huge gap between the learning institutions and the industries or the private sectors, because the learning institutions, they focus more on the theories. They do not offer enough environment for students to practice. So having a link between these organizations, private and public, industry and government institutions, it is going to bridge the gap that we have, and to also make students be able to practice even more and to become more creative, because they are actually practicing what they have learned and put them into practice in the environment where the society needs their solutions. So they will see I mean, they will start getting they will start seeing the output, or their innovation into being the solutions which are needed in the society. And this is going to encourage them to and also be a catalyst, I mean, a catalyst to the development of educational infrastructure, and also to the tailored African needs and opportunities. So we need to have such kind of an encouraging environment that is going to bring both girls and boys to pursue STEM in an equal uh, way.
Great, thank you so much. I think you've addressed, I mean, the critical issues in terms of what we can do at various aspects at individual level and at very policy level. But let me push to a much higher level, the regional or even global level, because I also think there's a lot of opportunities there. And I want to bring Alice into the conversation. So, Alice, I mean, as someone that works with regional institutions or global institutions, I think you would be very interested in what's at the global level, what happens. And one thing that resonates with me in this conversation is the fact that this year, 2024, African Union has actually themed is as the year of education, which means the focal point of our conversation on the continent this year is around how do we address education problem. We know something that could be foundational issue, but foundational learning, but that also means we can actually have the conversation around STEM and all of this. So my question is, what do you think as we have this opportunity at the regional level to really discuss education problems on the continent? What would you think as the priority for STEM, and how do you think policymakers in our countries, I mean, from Tanzania to Egypt to South Africa, what do you think the national policymakers can leverage that regional and global conversation around in order to ensure that we start really addressing that problem both bottom up and top down?
Thank you, Adedeji. It's very timely that we have education as the focus by the African Union, and what that could look like in after a year, or what the trajectory could be for Africa. And I think that our youth dividend could be a profit or could be a bane for us. And so we have to know how we are preparing our youth for their future. And this cannot happen without STEM. I know that their unions summary on their focus on education borders around out of school, borders around learning poverty and also inadequacy in teachers. And you know that across these sectors, STEM has a role to play, but also in thinking about what we can do in placing STEM central. I think it is very clear that Africa's development would be driven by the innovation, the research, the critical research, creativity, and innovation that its young people are able to produce. And so putting STEM as central to this agenda would be very important, not just for the African youth, but for Africa as a continent. And I say this because when you do an analysis of some recent emerged, what we call developed high income countries like Korea, like Singapore, and you do a regression analysis of the number of their STEM graduates or the number of headcount of researchers in science and innovation, you see that there is a strong linear correlation between the number of STEM graduates or the number of STEM researchers and the economic growth. And we know that majority of sub-Saharan African countries are low-income countries, and so we need that. And we also know that women and girls are they're mostly vulnerable in our population, and so we want them to come into this arena of making education a focus and saying that what is the target of getting girls to study STEM? How do we get there? And I'm going to give a good example of what the World Bank is doing at the regional level or at the continental level, which is the Africa Higher Education Centers of Excellence, which is ACE. And what ACE does is it has centers across over 34 countries. And what these centers do is to innovate and broaden access to STEM at the higher education level. And so we need regional collaboration across centers like that, and we'll need countries to invest in centers like that. And in this investment, there is a critical focus on getting policies that ensure that more girls or more women at the higher education level are getting into these kind of centers to drive some of the innovations that I want to see. And so I'd want to see more conversation around regional approaches where there is exchange of knowledge between African universities. There are visits to some of these centers to see the innovations happening where there are girls participating and leading some of these projects. We would want to see some other relevant international collaborations between regional centers of that kind happening between high-income countries, low and middle-income countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And the idea is there is the impact of knowledge circulation or innovation circulation where the African development is being driven by Africans, but equally the African innovation and creativity is being circulated around the world and is being used to impact the lives of many other people beyond the continent. And I think women should be placed in the center of this conversation to ensure that our ideas, our knowledge, our critical values are being used to propel the change that we want to see as Africa moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. I think this conversation, we need to have it beyond this place because, I mean, some of the initiatives you've described at the regional, national, and global level, I think it's part of how do we really make sure that we track these innovations and interventions to make sure whether where we need to double up and where we need more kind of coordination issues, I imagine. So thanks so much. So my last question, which would be for two of you, and I would like you to respond to, for example, one of our participants, Wamba, I think he made comment that in Zambia that they've seen some similar factors around performance of girls in science and mathematics in primary school. So I mean, that really resonates with me as someone that really has worked around foundational learning issues and foundational skills. So two questions in one that I will ask you to reflect in one minute of is what do you think we can even do at a much lower educational level? STEM used to come up in secondary school, but at primary level, maybe there are some also problem that emerge out of at such lower level. What do you think we could start doing even at a much lower level? Then the second question I will ask to both of you is, there's a recent buzz around generative AI. Everybody is talking about generative AI. Do you see this as a leveler or that's or as a factor that will amplify exclusion for
Okay.
women? I think who wants to go first? Alice?
Let me go first, maybe.
Okay, Gloriana. Yeah, great.
Yeah, since we are running out of time, I think we're just left with 4 minutes. So I will just take at least 1 minute
Yeah.
to say what I just wanted to say. And yeah, on your first question, what should be done on the lower level, especially in primary school? I think I would also suggest the same to be done to the lower level, like creating an inclusive environment that is going uh, to impact the learning or the learning process of and to encourage students to take up or not to fear the science subjects, because in primary schools we don't call them like STEM but oh yeah, science subjects, which are really making a foundation for STEM career. And probably students should be introduced in few things that can actually encourage them to join those career later on. For instance, I've seen students, primary students, learning coding or learning, to do some simple scientific experiments and whatsoever. So those kind of things, they actually excite students, and we should actually take them seriously, but also having both, gender participate equally, not excluding any of their gender. And going to the other question of generative AI, whether it's going to bring, is going to be a leveler or is going to bring more exclusion. Uh, what I think is that generative AI, they hold immense potential in democratizing the access of information and tools, potential, serving these fields, including the STEM. But if we are not careful enough or to have an attention during the design and deployment of these systems, it could actually amplify the existing gender biases. So we need to ensure that we try to address these biases in AI from the training data that we are using, so that we do not perpetuate the same biases that are existing in the society. Otherwise, we will, it's going to do more harms than more goods. So we need to have to engage diverse groups in the AI development so that they can address those biases during the training of data and
So
such kind
Gloria,
of thing.
30 seconds. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks. Alice, do you want to go in like 30 seconds?
Yeah, I think Gloria has hit the nail on top of the head. I think these are brilliant suggestions, especially with the AI. We need to be conscious about how we're doing it now, because then if we're not very conscious, it might widen the inequalities, because already these are paid platforms. And so who is assessing and who not, and under what socio-economic circumstances define that? Um, and then in terms of the first question, I think what I would suggest is that at this point, teachers play a very critical role. And I say teachers play a very critical role is that we have many of our children spending more time in school than even at home at that very early age. And so how teachers present STEM and how STEM is portrayed as a valuable cause would be very important for young people to develop that kind of interest. And so, how many female teachers are teaching STEM? How are they teaching the STEM? Are they using everyday examples? Are they using everyday simple tools to teach STEM? Are they making STEM part of the daily lives of these children? I think that is where the foundation starts. And so there are skills and competencies of teachers to teach STEM and bring out the value in STEM would define how young people or children at that early stage define their interest in STEM and what kind of value they place on STEM. And I think that this is where policy design in terms of teacher education and also the trajectory of countries. For instance, Ghana is currently very big on STEM, and there are a lot of concentration around how STEM is being taught, what kind of schools are being dedicated to STEM, and in large where the country stands in terms of STEM education. I think that at that age, you would say that it goes beyond just the immediate environment for teachers to take a central role in that. And so that
Thanks.
is what I'll conclude with. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alice, and sorry about that, but we are just 1 minute over our time. So I want to say thanks to Alice, Amenga, and Gloriana for this wonderful interaction section that you've actually contributed a lot. And personally, I've learned a lot, and I believe our audience also have learned a lot. So thank you so much, and we look forward to having you more and also discussing even this beyond this online meeting. With that, I want to really bring in back Mitchell to round up and tell us about other interesting webinar that we have in this series. Mitchell.
Thank you so much for that, Adedeji. And thank you so much to our speakers and to our moderator for a fascinating, incredible session. I just want to say it was so much that we've learned and so much that we're going to take home from this. I'd like to welcome everybody on this call and beyond this call to anyone who's interested to participate in our series even further. So we have an added webinar this month on the 22nd. And we will add details. So you can just let us know if you're interested and we would like to see you there. And again, thank you so much to our moderator and thank you so much to our speakers. And I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good night to everyone who's managed to attend today. And again, Adedeji, thank you so much for moderating. And we will see you soon.